Hello and welcome to another episode of the Real EFL Preview Show. My name is Gary Hutchinson, and before we get started, please remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our great content. We've got a fantastic show coming up for you today, and the focus switches to the FA Cup. That's right, the magic of the cup is alive and well, even though we're into round 4. And as an EFL show, we've picked 2 games featuring EFL sides for you that are full of intrigue. We're also going to be looking at League 2, where there's almost a full fixture. It's a tightly packed division. And helping me to do all of this is our resident EFL expert, Kyle Kennealey. Kyle, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I've got a nice, lovely EFL game to go to tonight. I'm at Chesterfield versus Doncaster in League 2, as I say. I've had a little bit of football this week, and I'll have plenty more over the weekend as well, as I very usually do.
Very good. Well, regular viewers and those who notice that I'm no longer in a studio will obviously realise I, as you, are a Lincoln City fan, so I shall be at Lincoln and Cambridge. I'm actually going to a gig tonight, so I won't be at an EFL game, but I will be watching a singer-songwriter called Nick Parker. So if anybody likes kind of singer-songwriters, check him out. He's playing in Lincolnshire, but he's really good. Something that's not really good, Kyle, Carlisle United. They have been absolutely terrible in recent weeks. And as always on the show, we get to start with managerial news at Carlisle. This week, obviously, there was, as there always seems to be, a sacking. Mike Williamson has gone from his role relatively quickly, and he has been replaced, of all people, by Mark Hughes. Now, I'd seen names linked with the Carlisle job. Ian Evatt, never going to go there. Mark Kennedy would have taken them down. John Brady, a brilliant appointment for Carlisle United. But they've gone for Mark Hughes. Now, he actually did a really good job at Bradford for a while. I think he took them to the playoffs where, ironically, Carlisle beat them and ended their promotion dream. But it's still come a little bit out of left field with 16 games to go, I think, for the Cumbrians.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to start with the timing of it. I think I spent weeks banging on about managerial sackings and having time in the transfer window. And then you, of all days, do not expect to see a manager dismissed on deadline day. And it follows a little bit of a similar pattern from when Paul Simpson was dismissed. I think that was the 31st of August. So again, right at the end of the summer window. So Carlisle definitely have form for this type of business at the moment. It was also even weirder given the fact that they had made 11 signings, I believe, in the January transfer window. So there's likes of loan deals for Joe Hugill, where you had Charlie MacArthur from Newcastle, along with Elliot Embleton, Sedwin Scott, Paul Dummett, Stephen Worm from league rivals MK Dons, Josh Williams from Birmingham. There was just a vast amount of names that Carlisle had signed in the window. So it seems really weird that he'd been allowed the whole window. I don't know how much input he had in every single one of them signings, but you usually assume that they'd have had a decent amount. And then all of a sudden, as I say, on deadline day, he's gone. And it does feel strange. We obviously know where Carlisle are in the table. If they do go down, though, I genuinely fear for them as a club in terms of not even just their long-term survival, more so short-term. There could genuinely be real financial issues there. So they've obviously done everything they can with the money they spent in January, with the players they've got on board. And now, obviously, with Mark Hughes coming in.
Yeah, and like you say, I fear for them a little bit. They felt like they were pushed up out of League 2 a little bit early when they came into League 1. They were obviously the whipping boys in League 1. I mean, Paul Simpson had done a great job to take them out, but they were clearly underprepared for League 1. And since then, unfortunately, momentum is a big thing, isn't it? And you look at the likes of Wrexham and Stockport and Chesterfield, who have got forward momentum coming out of the National League, and you even can go back as far as Bristol Rovers and Lincoln City, get us in there now, with that forward momentum to go through divisions. But sometimes you can go in a downward spiral as well, and that does appear to be where Carlisle United are. If you were going out on a limb, Kyle, would you have them as relegated this season?
It's genuinely really tough to say, and I don't like to always just go, "Oh, it's tough," because we know how the EFL is all the time. I don't know whether they'll have enough to stay up. In all honesty, as I said, with the players they've signed, you would expect that they'll definitely give it a really good crack. And I really like Mark Hughes as a manager. Before he'd managed Bradford, I think every single one of his jobs had been in the Premier League. He was a great manager for years at keeping clubs up, doing really well with them as he did with Blackburn. I think he led them to 3 top 10 finishes, managed almost 700 games. But it was that spell in between, I think, when he had 4 years out and then went to Bradford. And obviously you say about the irony of it all, that when he was managing Bradford, they'd made the playoffs and then lost to Carlisle. Carlisle go up, and then suddenly they're both at opposite ends of the division in Bradford and Carlisle at the moment. And I'm certain that'll be a very tasty fixture when they clash. I think I can't even remember actually if they played twice this season already. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, certainly I genuinely feel that they'll definitely give it a shot, but I don't know. I really don't know if they'll stay up this season or not.
No, I mean, in League Two, it does look at the moment like it's probably 2 from 6. So obviously Carlisle are bottom with 21 points. They do have a game in hand over Morecambe, who are second bottom on 23. But then there's a 3-point gap. So there's a 5-point gap between Carlisle and Tranmere on the same games. Accrington are down there. They're on 29. So they're already 6 points clear of the relegation zone. Harrogate 7 points clear, but they've played 30 games. Which is 2 more than Carlisle. And then Barrow may just be in there on 31. You'd think Gillingham on 27 games with 32 will probably have enough to keep themselves in the division. If you keep creeping up the division, though, there are 2 teams kind of ensconced in mid-table mediocrity. You've got Bromley in 16th. They're on 36 points, so they're 13 clear of the relegation. But they're also 11 shy of the playoffs. Just above them on 38 points are MK Dons. They're actually in 11th, but they're 9 points off the playoffs. This is a really strange game, Kyle, for you to pick. It's mid-table nothingness between MK Dons and Bromley. They're 2 sides that have also been on difficult runs of form recently. So who do you see coming out on top? And just explain to us why on earth you picked a game that, even fans of MK Dons and Bromley might not be that interested in it.
My thinking is genuinely, I go through the games that we've done before, and I like to try and get across pretty much every club in the division. And I think this was 2 teams that we hadn't covered as of yet. That is purely my thinking. In terms of, obviously, when I was looking at all the other games, it is not the game that stood out. I'm under no illusions that this is not the greatest game. I'm hoping it proves me wrong in terms of entertainment on Saturday, but I do appreciate that it is not the greatest of games. But I'm going to tell you why. Why do you think it'll be a good game, I guess, in some respects? So MK Dons had a really disastrous January, but weirdly started it with a win and ended it with a win. So they beat Chesterfield and then lost 3 on the trot to Salford, Walsall and Fleetwood. Drew Wimbledon and then beat Harrogate at the end of the month. But unsurprisingly, I guess, they lost to Doncaster at the weekend. So they are 11th in the table, and 9 points adrift of the top 7, which just feel after they've gone on this run, and I've seen a lot of MK Dons fans pointing this out, that they've been poor for a little bit of a while now, but they are still somewhat in a chance of getting into the top 7 this season. And then you contrast it to Bromley, who had this really, really good run not so long ago, and they're at 5 places, but only 2 points adrift of MK Dons at the moment. In midweek, they looked like getting 3 points when they were 3-0 up at Salford, but conceded 3 times in the final half an hour, including once in stoppage time to draw 3-3. Lost to Grimsby the game before that, and there was that, I don't know if you've seen it, the Danny Rose unconventional goal that I cannot believe he had managed to score. It was a really, really, as I say, unconventional finish. You don't often see a goal like that. The end of January with a loss at Chesterfield, so it was another game that they had lost without scoring. They'd drawn to Notts County, beat Colchester. Seems like they've gone on a really bad run, actually, after playing Newcastle in the FA Cup. And there's a little parallel to Salford with that, who had struggled as well. And it seems fitting that they'd obviously both played each other in midweek. Salford has struggled as well since going out of the FA Cup with that 8-0 loss at Manchester City. And this all came after they'd started the month really, really well. They'd beat Gillingham 3-0. They'd obviously lost to Crewe 4-1, but Crewe were in automatic promotion contention. So in terms of the game on Saturday, I really don't know. Again, it's another tight game to call. If I had to say, though, I think I would go with an away win.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was actually going to use the Newcastle FA Cup game as a segue into our next match, but you've ruined that now. So I'll think of another one while we're going through. Sticking with MK Dons and Bromley, I mean, with them both kind of being marooned in mid-table there, do you think either side has what it takes to push towards the top 7 with a result in this game, or is the gap already too much to make up?
I think, to be honest, it's probably too much makeup. In terms of from a Bromley perspective, I think they're probably where they would have hoped to be at the start of the season. They've had a really good campaign. As I say, it's just kind of, I guess, leveling out at the moment. So they had a really good couple of months, and then the recent form hasn't been great, but they're probably where they should be. MK Dons will obviously have expected to be much higher than where they are at the moment. I do, though, still think there is a very slight chance that they make the playoffs. It just seems though with League Two so packed at the top that there could be a side that comes through. Weirdly, I think Swindon are in contention after we spoke for a long while about how they were down at the bottom, and they've suddenly popped up in mid-table. And I think I'd said about Salford before. Now they'd come from absolutely nowhere to go into playoff contention. They've still got a chance of making the top 7. So it's definitely possible for a side to do. If I'm honest, though, I don't think either will, and I think they'll both be set for mid-table finishes this season.
Yeah, I mean, just sticking with League Two, and I know you've not prepped anything on this, but you ruined my segue, so I'll put you on the spot. Obviously, Danny Cowley's managed to get Colchester kind of up and away from the bottom. They're doing really well now, probably in a better position than Swindon with 2 games in hand of them. But when you actually look at the playoffs, really, I think realistically, it's anything down to Chesterfield in 10th. Now, Chesterfield have thrown a lot of money at it, and they're on 39 points, so they're even 8 points behind Bradford in 7th. So you could argue it maybe begins with Grimsby, but I just want to pick up on AFC Wimbledon, because obviously they've played fewer games than many other teams, kind of come through the ranks. They're just sitting now in 4th place. They've got a game in hand of Notts County and 2 points behind them. They're 2 games in hand of Doncaster and 4 points behind them. Could they be a serious shout for automatic promotion?
Yeah, I certainly think so. I think earlier in the campaign, they had this really good start. They were excellent at home. I think they had the best home record for a long while. They had the issues with their pitch, which has obviously caused the fact that they've got games in hand at the moment. But they're in really good form as well. I think they've won 4 of the last 6. They're unbeaten in that time frame as well. I certainly feel they've definitely got a chance. That top 3 at the moment feels very good. Obviously, you've got the effects of what Walsall are going through now in terms of losing Nathan Lowe, and they've hit a little bit of a blip. You've got Doncaster going on the same sort of run they had around this time of year when they went from a team that were really struggling at the bottom to suddenly making the playoffs. They've won their last 4, and they're 5 of the last 6. You've got Notts County as well, a brilliant team. They've got great firepower up front. They've got Jody Jones back. They've also got Alexander Jatta, David McGoldrick. They've got wonderful players in attack, and I think that was really crucial that they'd held on some of them as well over the winter window, and they're in good form as well. I think they're similar sort of 4 wins from their past 5 and beaten in 5. So yeah, you've got some really top teams in there. Not forgetting the likes of Crewe and Port Vale as well. You've got Bradford who have been on that run. So I think there's genuinely anyone inside the top 7 at the moment could have a genuine chance of automatic promotion. But of all the teams, Wimbledon have the games in hand. So I think that suits them the best.
It absolutely does. And it took a Fabian Schär penalty for Newcastle United to beat Wimbledon in the League Cup. And that leads us nicely on to Newcastle United and Birmingham City. I can see you liked that. You might have snookered me when it came to my segue. I had to quickly think to set one up. And AFC Wimbledon jumped.
I'm impressed.
Are you impressed at that? Ever the professional. I'm like a magician revealing my secrets. So obviously we've got Birmingham City and Newcastle United. Birmingham City absolutely going to be a championship team next season. They are flying in League One. This could have, it looks like almost like a Premier League clash, doesn't it? 2 huge teams coming off against each other. The Blues have undoubtedly been the best side in League One this season. They're still in the EFL Trophy. Can they cope with the demand of all these games, first and foremost?
Yeah, I think they've certainly got the squad for it. You look at all the players they've signed. I mean, there's even look at the likes of Mark Leonard. Last season, one of the best players in the league. I think he started 7 games this season, but he played every minute, I think, or started every game, sorry, in the EFL Trophy, and he set up Jay Stansfield's winner on Tuesday evening. So they've just got that amount of squad depth that should set them in good stead to go on and win League One, which I think everyone expects, but also have a nice little run in the EFL Trophy, which they certainly seem to be taking the most seriously out of every side. But that is because they have the depth to do it, and there is no reason why they shouldn't. We always speak about sides who have come down to League One and struggle. And at the start of the season, I know a lot of people said that Birmingham will find it a little bit more difficult than many people were anticipating. It kind of depends which side you were looking at, whether you were saying they were going to win the league unbeaten, which I know some fans had said. I don't know how realistic they were being, or whether you thought they might slip up and finish inside the playoffs, but they've obviously proved them doubters wrong. They've been excellent this season. They've opened up an 8-point gap now to Wrexham in third place after they beat Rotherham at the weekend. Rotherham gave them a tough game, but that seems to be the case in most of their games. They just have enough quality on the pitch to come through. They don't tend to thrash sides, in all honesty. A lot of their games have been fairly close in the scoreline, not so in the stats. But there you go. They beat they beat Huddersfield at the end of January to leave them. Huddersfield are now 15 points adrift of Birmingham, and I think I said last week how I'd tipped Huddersfield to go on to win automatic promotion, and that seems dead and buried at the moment. They're on an 18-match unbeaten run as well across all competitions. I think there were 7 wins from 8 in December. They progressed in the FA Cup and the EFL Trophy, and obviously they're still in both competitions. So I think this will be a really, really good chance for them to test themselves this weekend.
Now, the last time that they were in the third tier, Birmingham City won it in 1995, but they also won the equivalent of the EFL Trophy back in 1995 as well. It was the Autoglass Windscreen Shield final. It was won by a golden goal against Carlisle United, and it was scored by a player called Paul Tate. Were you alive in 1995, Kyle?
No, I was not. I was -9.
-9. Wow. 1996. What a summer that was. 4 weddings was out. It was all kicking off. So anyway, how likely is an upset on Saturday evening? Is this a chance for Birmingham to go and show the world how much they've improved and make a real statement even ahead of next season?
Yeah, I think so. I don't see an upset, in all honesty. A lot of it was dependent on last night in terms of Newcastle beating Arsenal, making it through to the League Cup final. They'll have another shot at winning a first trophy since 1955, which is obviously now their main ambition. But I think running the FA Cup will do them well as well. I know they've still got ambitions of making it back into top 4 and getting Champions League football back again. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did take it a little bit lighter. Obviously, the priority, like, as I say, was getting into the League Cup final, which they've done. And I don't think a lot of people would give them much of a chance. Certainly before the game was, before it was drawn, of beating Arsenal, particularly 4-0 on aggregate, winning both legs 2-0. Birmingham themselves, though, as I've just said about the EFL Trophy, they've got an excellent chance now of making it through to the final. So I think their priorities will obviously be a little bit on that, so more so on the league. So as I say, in all honesty, I don't see an upset on Saturday night, but it is a perfect chance for them to go out, give an account of themselves. And if they can pull off an upset, then brilliant. It keeps them going on 3 of the 4 fronts they'd started this season.
Very good. So Birmingham are knocking on the door of the Championship, and they are joined in that pursuit by Wickham. And I notice you in your notes here have set me up a little segue. We go from first place in League One to second. So well done, Kyle. With FA Cup with Wickham, who are also in FA Cup action. Now, obviously, big news at Wickham this week, and we haven't mentioned that, so we will at the moment. They brought in Mike Dodds as manager to replace Matt Bloomfield. Kind of came a little bit out of left field. I mean, Dodds has worked in coaching and player development at Coventry, Birmingham, Sunderland as well. But it's quite a big step up, isn't it, to manage a team chasing promotion from League One. Do you see, before we get into the game, Wickham carrying this through and ending up as a Championship side, or do you think this is the tipping point for them?
No, I do think they'll go on and get promoted now. As I said, for weeks I'd mentioned Huddersfield, and I think after this week I will finally drop saying Huddersfield too much, because it feels like every week I've spoke about them at the moment. No, in all seriousness, yeah, I do think they'll be the side that they get promoted now. I've had my critics as well of Wrexham, and this was nothing against them. I just felt that they'd been fairly fortunate a few games. I think a lot of the stats had backed that up. But yeah, at the moment, obviously Wickham in second. They dropped a couple of points recently, but I do think that they might struggle a little bit as Mike Dodds comes in and tries to stamp his authority on them. But I think overall they'll be fine this season. They've got an excellent squad there, so I think they are set for promotion.
So before we look at them, they're playing Preston North End, by the way. I don't even think I mentioned Preston North End there. It's unusual the Championship club don't get a mention before the League One club. That's my bias, being a League One, I'm not going to say expert. But first of all, can Wickham pull off a scalp then against Preston North End?
I don't want to keep sitting on the fence, because I seem to every week seem that that I'm like that. This was actually a game that I'd done for the Real EFL as a prediction piece. We don't actually give the prediction for the game. No, actually, I had right at the start on the first thing, and I did actually put Preston to win. I do think that they will avoid an upset this weekend. As I said though about Wickham, the points they dropped recently, they were denied 3 points against Cambridge quite late in the game. But you had the game before that when they beat Barnsley. They were drawing up until the 95th minute when they had Richard Coney, subject to interest from Luton. They had that 6 million bid turned down. He scored both their goals, a penalty to equalise, and then the winner in injury time. I think he was absent though from the Cambridge game, and I know the Portsmouth game, the game that they got to get to this point, he'd only played the final 15 minutes, so I'm not too sure whether he'll start at the weekend. And they'd suffered a little bit of a blip, so obviously they'd lost a couple of games early on in the season, and then they went on that great unbeaten run for a long, long time, which ended over Christmas when they lost to Charlton, and then when they'd lost against Huddersfield. But they've recovered really, really well, and they're now 5 games unbeaten. But I do think it will be a step too far for them to get results on Saturday.
So obviously it's Deepdale, it's Preston North End, once had a plastic pitch, but I think that was ripped up once again around 1995. So it will be a completely and utterly oblivious to you. Preston have quite a quiet window, but they still look to have come out of it stronger. They're making quite steady strides forward. Now the playoffs do appear unlikely for what I think are the Championship's longest serving club. But could an FA Cup run be on the cards instead?
Yeah, I think they have a good chance of winning the weekend. As I say, I expect them to go and beat Wickham. That is purely, I think probably the golfing quality at the moment. This could well be a Championship game next season. I do expect it to be a Championship game. Just looking at the players they brought in, I think they signed a left back, which was, I'm certain I've read that they were 18 months without who is a recognised left back without signing one. But they've got Jaden Magoma from Brentford. A couple of other additions as well, Lewis Gibson and Ryan Porteous, that had arrived in the January window. But they had a good start to 2025. They'd obviously lost on Friday night against Blackburn in a Lancashire derby. I know they started it with a loss to West Brom. They've gone 5 games unbeaten across all competitions. After that, their draws against Oxford and Luton. Then they beat Watford and Middlesbrough, particularly a big result there, beating Middlesbrough. And they lost once as well in December, which was against QPR. We've had a real resurgence. And they've won both their games over the festive period, beating Hull and Sheffield Wednesday. So there are only 3 losses in their last 16 in all competitions. So, as I say, a lot of the focus will obviously be on Wickham and the fact that the Mike Dodds has come in. But you certainly should not forget that Preston are in this game. And I do think that home advantage will suit them well at the weekend, and they will go on and win the game. And who knows who they could get in the next round. It could be set for another really good tie.
Excellent, very good. So there are FA Cup ties. Now, I'm quite surprised you didn't pick out another one, and I know you've not prepared for it, but we've got a couple of minutes. I just have to mention it. Is Leeds and Millwall. Now, Leeds obviously have had a phenomenal week. They've put 7 past Cardiff. They've been absolutely rampant in everything that they do. Is there any way that Millwall get past this, and is there any way that Leeds United don't play in the Premier League next season?
The only way that Leeds don't play is if they will do, and I don't want to seem bitter, but if they do a Leeds United, I guess, in some respects, as is commonly said, when they tend to get to the end of the season and the pressure hits them a little bit. I don't think that will be the case though this year. They seem in great stead for promotion. It's been excellent. I know, obviously, you've got great teams at the top of that division as well. The likes of Burnley, James Trafford, I think, has just broken Burnley's club record with 15 games to go for clean sheets in the season. They've been utterly superb as well. You've got Sheffield United and then Sunderland in there as well. And you look at them teams, there are 8 points separating them. Sunderland to Blackburn is a 13-point gap. So it is obviously going to be 2 or 4 unless one of them sides in the playoff places has a ridiculous run, beating all sorts of records. Yeah, Leeds up well set now. I know Sheffield United have a game in hand, but they've got a 5-point gap. They've been on a really good run of form, and I think there've been criticisms at some point about their strike force and scoring goals, which have been soundly answered, I think, in January and by beating Cardiff 7-0. And even the game last night, I think they probably should have put a few more past Coventry, but it hasn't hindered them so far. They've scored by far the most goals in the Championship. They have 62. If you compare that to the other sides at the top of the Championship, Burnley have scored 37. I think there was a stat earlier that I saw about Leeds creating more big chances than both Burnley and Sheffield United combined. So I think that says it all, really. As I say, they've been excellent. Just looking at Millwall, I don't think they'll have what it takes to cause an upset. I guess at the weekend, I guess it can be described as an upset. They are on a 3-game winning run at the moment, so there is that little bit of optimism there. And Leeds will obviously be focusing on getting automatic promotion and even winning the title this season. Millwall seem to have cleared themselves a little bit from somewhat relegation concerns. I think a couple of weeks ago I picked them as a game and said they needed to win this to stop themselves from being dragged into the bottom 3, but they've cleared that at the moment and they look well set. They're on 40 points at the moment, so that is not going to get you relegated as long as they pick up a few more points for the rest of the season. But I think Leeds will win on Saturday at lunchtime.
Yeah, unbelievably, we had Millwall as a possible relegation class. They have 13 points off the relegation spots and just 4 points off the playoffs. And when you look at it, in actual fact, it's unbelievable that West Brom in 6th have got 44 points from 30 games, and Millwall in 14th have got 40. So Millwall, QPR, Watford, Coventry, Sheffield Wednesday, Bristol City, Norwich, Middlesbrough, and West Brom, and arguably Blackburn, all feel like they're fighting for 2 playoff spaces. Kyle, thank you very much for your time once again. Your insight has, as always, been superb. We are the Real EFL Preview show. He's the expert. I'm the one that just comes up with the interesting segues. Please do remember to like the channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more content, and we'll be back next week. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a good